Hello, everybody. It's 10:08 p.m. Central Time on the 11th of January, 2023. Wednesday, here in the United States still, getting ready to roll over to Thursday. We're almost to the weekend. Hope you're doing well. We have some seismic activity to talk about. And, of course, we know there's been a little bit of an increase in larger earthquake activity, and you can kind of see it here on the screen. I've got the solar turned on right now, which is the yellow line you see here on the screen. Let me get a display capture turned on just so you can see what I see ever so slightly better and show you this. Okay, so the reason we have this turned on, this is the sun, trajectory at least, and showing us the terminator line between daylight and nighttime. Okay, so right now, nighttime is over on the right-hand side or to the east, and daytime, again, sunset is right here. So that means sunrise is over here right now, and the path that the sun is projected to take goes like that. So anyway, we're watching that because on the side of the earth that's facing the sun, or well, however you want to look at it, but whatever side the sun's on, is that, we watch for this X-class flare level activity to start coming in. Even though it's not showing anything on Enlil or any of the other charts, I'm getting suspect on that because it's 3 different X-class flares where they're not showing us anything going on, going back 6 days ago, where right after, literally within a day or two after the X-class flare activity came over on the Earth-facing side of the sun, next thing you know, we start getting 7.0 level activity breaking out across the plates. Then we get multiple new X's and not much talk about it on the news. Well, that lets me know to keep watch on it just in case. So we're watching on the side of the Earth that faces the sun at any given time when the solar flares arrive. On top of everything else, I know there's going to be people that say there's no relation or whatever. I'm not here to debate that. I'm just talking about what I watch for, okay? Now let's get into the earthquake activity. Should we talk about the 5 that struck off the west coast of the United States, Oregon? Should we talk about the 6 that struck down next to Point Nemo on our fracture zone down to the south, north of our X's, in the South Pacific? Should we talk about the 7 still that was still residual from a day and a half ago over here at Indonesia, which caused a new little island to rise? Did you guys see that news on the island that rose over here on my community page? I made a post on it. You guys come over to my YouTube page, click on community, and just scroll down a little bit. You'll see a picture of it. That's not a mud volcano. That's actual rock that was forced up by a fault that basically thrust upward. It didn't create a tsunami. It's a small little island there. But it's still a sign that it was major shifting. It was felt all the way down in Australia, down here, where all kinds of videos were uploaded, where people, and it was a long, low frequency rumble going on that side of the earthquake over here down in Australia. If you go back and watch those videos, you can hear it. It's amazing. So the whole thing shifted and broke, but there was no tsunami activity because it was lateral shifting. It was going side to side instead of up and down. Side to side on this S-shaped plate boundary there, where I should probably at this point just open a USGS plate boundary map. That'll make it just a little bit easier to see what I'm talking about here. So let's go over in the West Pacific. Here's the Indo-Australian plate. The spot which broke is the S-shaped plate boundary in here where the USGS has a few red lines. It was felt as far south as North Australia, and it was felt all the way up north. Of course, you would expect this across Papua New Guinea and South Philippines. But main epicenter of this and the main shaking taking place right where the break happened on the bottom side or the south side of the S-shaped plate boundary that branches out. Let's get all the smaller earthquakes out of there. You see how it goes out to the west and up to the north? Well, let's take a look at what struck since the big earthquake. So we'll get all the smaller earthquakes out of there. All the bigger, there we go. This is what has struck since. So over to the west, we got a near 5.0 earthquake striking over at Java, right next to Mount Krakatau. Mount Krakatau is in the strait here in between Java and Sumatra. We got a same-sized earthquake up to the north next to Guam. Guam is the tiny little island right here. I'll show you where these are on the plate boundaries. These are all on the plate boundaries. So two of the same size quakes going out in two different directions, heading out and away. Then we got a third same size quake, 4.7 to 4.8, right next to Tokyo. And I have a warning going for Tokyo. So what really happened is the same sized earthquakes spread all the way up to Tokyo and all the way out over to the west, going to Indonesia. And we haven't even talked about Asia yet, but we will. Same size quakes went all the way out beyond, all the way over to the Red Sea and over to Europe, all on the last day. 4.9 over here at Europe and so forth, 4.6 to 4.7 at Africa on the antipode. So let's go back. What's happened? A big amount of movement, but it's not huge when it comes to earthquake size. Magnitude-wise, we're all in the 5 and near 6.0 range, with the big earthquakes from a couple days ago being the biggest of the bunch so far. I've got a few warnings going, which I'm not rescinding or canceling for the next several days. 5 days, 4 to 5 more days we're going to watch. In the middle here for a potential large earthquake in the same size range as the previous 2 7s. And there's our 2 7s with the big rings. Again, on either side, look where the rings overlap. Right in the middle, I've got a warning. Also have a warning going for 6.5 level up in Tokyo, Japan. We also have a warning for 6.5 level or bigger to strike all the way over here next to India and Afghanistan. Just a few of the warnings. If you want to see all the warnings or hear me talk about them, it takes about 30 minutes for me to go through the whole planet, but it's over in a video on my YouTube channel from just a couple days ago. Let's recap down to the south. A 6 struck down at Point Nemo, but what's going on down there? See our fracture zone going to the north? It's like a line that connects to the north. I'll show you on the USGS map in about a second, but look where it goes. It carries on further past Rapa Nui and Easter Island, which is this little dot here next to the red arrow, and it carries on up to the north. Look, another near 5 struck on the north side yesterday. Now, how are those two connected? Well, let's go back to the USGS map. I'll show you. All the way over across the Pacific. So down here is our 6, and USGS doesn't have it on their map because this is 24 hours of quakes on the USGS map, but up here to the north, the 5 struck up here. So we're moving on both sides of the Pacific, heading out in 2 directions, or really 3. One up to Japan, one over to Indonesia, and one across over to South America and Central America. And we're breaking on both sides right now. Think of these 2 earthquakes coming across on both sides like 2 trains on 2 bridges. And when they get to the other side, they hit this wall, which, of course, you see here now, which is the fracture zone that goes north to south. That then catches the energy or the wave, and it takes it up and to the north, for instance, and it takes it down and to the south. Now, in the middle, we tend to see a break. When both sides move on the north side of South America and the south side, guess what else breaks in the middle? Things are getting ready to go through the roof, it looks like, and the number of deep earthquakes has not let up. For instance, we have a new deep 5 down below South America, down below Argentina, way back over here to the east. I haven't looked up the earthquake, but I can just show you across. Here's Argentina down here to the south. We go back over to the west, and that's where our deep earthquakes are coming up, all the way across the Pacific over here at below Tonga and Fiji. Another way to look at it is really we're coming across with energy all the way from over here, and look what it's caused over on the west side, 7s. So for South America, it looks like we're going to go up at least into this 6.5 level. I've already issued the warnings for it. If you want to hear the warned areas, you can go back and watch my video from 2 days ago. Before we get into the United States, which we have a lot to talk about with the United States, quickly over to the west, I have a warning going right here where that town broke apart. And that's, let's see, again, the people who were telling me the name over and over again, I'll have to hear it like 20 times for me to remember it. But it's like Joshipuri or something, okay? It's a town that's broken apart, and they don't have an explanation for it, according to authorities. But it's on the plate boundary. I can even show it to you. I'm going to go back over to the USGS plate boundary map. We'll go over to Nepal, and there we go. So see where we come out of Nepal and go up to the west by northwest, and then we go over into Afghanistan and Pakistan. Okay, that's breaking apart there, but there's no earthquake activity accompanying it. It's literally just shifting and breaking. I mean, there was a 4 there yesterday, but not at the town or anything. It was far away. But again, it's shifting on the plate boundary. That's what's really going on. And why is it shifting on the plate boundary? Well, the Indo-Australian plate's going into overdrive. And how can earthquakes kind of tell us what's going on all the way over in India from half a world away? The plate itself connects India, Australia, Indo-Australia plate, and the energy is flowing across these red lines. So it's breaking up here, it's tilting or something. Some kind of shifting is happening up here on the northwest side of the Indo-Australian plate, while earthquakes are actually breaking out back over here on the east side or southeast side, or northeast side, depending on which way you want to look at this. To the east, we're breaking out with the earthquakes, and then the shifting is taking place on the west-northwest side. Look, this whole thing's shifting. And when it shifts, we get big earthquakes, like the one that broke over at, let's see, 2014 over at Nepal. I want to say it was 2014. I don't remember the year. I apologize. It was one of the biggest earthquake in years, and it struck right here. It shifted Mount Everest on the plate boundary. I think we're getting ready to go up to a level just below that. So somewhere in that upper 6 range is a big deal for them. Now let's talk about Africa, and let's talk about the Red Sea. 4.6 struck right over here at Gabon. You got to remember, just a few days before, one of my viewers wrote me. It's actually pinned up as a comment on the video from 8 days ago. So one of my viewers wrote me when these 2 earthquakes struck, or actually when this 7 struck, they wrote and said, hey, since the 7s are striking there, shouldn't there be an antipode earthquake on the opposite side of the planet within a few days? And I said, good call, because guess what? Gabon just got hit, and that's the antipode, the opposite side of the planet. We were looking from Ascension Island. I brought this up in the video, this tiny little dot of an island here over to the coast of Africa. Why were we looking there? It's the antipode from the big earthquakes on the opposite side of the planet. So a new 5, or 4.6, struck down there to the south by southwest of Africa on the coast. 4.9 on the Red Sea, and a 4.3 up at the bend of the plate boundary at the number 7 shaped Carlsberg Ridge. Now, these 2 earthquakes we were looking for to happen. I brought this up. The number 7 shaped bend in the Carlsberg Ridge and the Red Sea. And the reason I brought this up in the last video is we had previous earthquake activity out here on the Indian Ocean fracture zone. Said it was going to come up here, and it was going to split 2 ways. It was going to go up the number 7 shaped bend up into Iran, and it was going to go over to the west and up into the Red Sea and divide. And we were going to take a 5 and divide it in half, or 4.9, and divide it in half. And what do we get? Well, let's wait for this to refresh. We got a 4.9 and a 4.3, or a 4.7 and a 4.3. Again, it's pretty much the same size quake. It's going around the outside edge of the plate boundary heading up to Europe, where we got the same sized earthquake activity. Take a look. Another 4.9 struck, and it struck right up here in the Aegean Sea, just north of Crete. And, of course, north of Crete, we also got a swarm, a little outbreak. Well, a little outbreak, not a swarm. Small outbreak taking place on the northeast side of Crete, but come on, another 4.9. So what happened? 4.9, 4.9, let's just call them 5s, went around the outside edge of the plate in the last day, up into Europe. And now you can see where we're clustered. We have a overlapping point of 3 rings on Greece. So Greece is about to get hit, but it'll be most likely in the mid-range 5 level right now. We're waiting for the energy to come out of Europe and go over to the west and a big break to take place along with it. So that's not showing yet. Okay, for my European viewers, really quick, let's just wrap this up on this side of the planet. Going up across up into North Italy, right at the border of France. We also have a series of earthquakes in Switzerland. However, they're all small. I'm going to look for 4s to go around the outside edge of Europe again. This means Romania and Ukraine, as well as Poland, are all going to get hit again. And this time it could go up into that 4.9 range. It could go near 5. Whenever we get near 5s in Eastern Europe, it's enough to cause damage. Down to the south by southwest. Over here along the coast of southwest Europe, going into Africa. We also watch for 5.0 level activity to happen at Morocco. Okay, now let's get into the United States. And let me get a sip of my coffee while we think about the earthquake activity increasing after the X-class flare activity, which showed 0, zilch, nada on all the charts coming at us. Nothing. Oh, actually not just coming at us. Nothing. Have you guys ever seen a bunch of X-class flares that don't produce any kind of charged particle or solar wind activity projected? I don't know what to make of it. Maybe old Brandon got a hold of the shut her down instead of get her done. Yeah, the old motto was get her done. Now it's shut her down. Okay, anyway, let's go take a look at the earthquakes. First of all, Hawaii. Hey, check it out, Hawaii. Hey, man, if I knew that if all I had to do was say something to get things done there, I'd speak up a lot more. Did you hear what happened? Well, USGS is running a live stream, okay? You know what? I can actually show you since it's on YouTube and it's public access. So this is a rarity where I can actually show you someone else's live stream legally and not step on any copyrights from the U.S. government. USGS has this live stream going here, over here on Hawaii. Now, take a look. See over here behind, see this line here, this dark area? Now, of course, you see the bubbling magma or lava coming up out and spreading out over the west. It's really cool. Look, it's kind of moving slowly over to the left-hand side. But anyway, a few days back, they had this panned out a little bit, and you could see across the way at night these little glowing spots up here along this dark area, and I thought it was a microwave tower. I thought it was like some kind of tower off in the distance or something. I thought this was like maybe the top of the caldera, and you could see over. So I just thought it was a microwave tower or something. Again, a few glowing spots up in the darkness up here. They were red and glowing. I figured it was, again, blinkers on a microwave tower or something. Anyway, the next day when the sun comes up, I see that this is zoomed in, and this is actually rock over here. This is a rock cliff face. And that those glowing spots that I saw were steaming, okay, and they were fumaroles. I'm like, oh, you know, I'm telling my viewers, I'm like, oh, guys, what I thought were microwave towers way off in the distance weren't. Instead, it's these little glowing fumaroles up front right over here on the side. And I go, just tonight when you're looking across, don't confuse them. You know, if you think it's off in the distance, this is actually zoomed in on the crater. I had no idea that they were zoomed in at that angle. I was just talking about it. Okay, so I'm talking about this. And then as I'm talking, within like a minute, more than a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, less than 5 minutes, all of a sudden the camera here at the USGS thing goes, somebody there, tilts it, brings it down, 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 over, 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 so that the spot that I was just talking about with the steaming and glowing was out of the shot. Then to make sure it was out of the shot, they zoomed in just a little bit to make sure that it was completely out of the frame. And I showed this as they did. I couldn't believe it. And they haven't moved it since to show across the way again. Or maybe they have now. I don't know. But it was the first time they'd moved the camera since they had it up. And here's daytime to show you that they hit it. It's right over here off the side. Now, why would they do that? People said, did I think they were responding? Oh, definitely, definitely. If you knew the story, again, you'd have to know the story about the USGS and how they've been responding to what I've been putting out over the last several years. They have been responding directly and doing some nasty stuff. So what's going on there? Why hide it, right? Well, look, little glowing fumaroles on the side of the crater mean that there's magma intruding underneath, and that's, of course, what's causing the steaming and the fumarole activity on the side, and the glowing that's coming up from underneath that's illuminating that steam that I thought was blinking lights from a microwave tower that is really just a whole line of them going up on the side of the crater. Just a few hundred feet up, but I guess they don't want people to see that because that means there's magma intruding on the side. And, it would make people think it's going to spread or something. It's not. I mean, if it did, it would just go up in the side and break and, fall off into a cliff face would break a little and fall off, I think. It's not. Unless it is. What if it is really spreading some major way and they don't want people to freak? I don't know. I don't know why they would hide it within a minute of me saying it or a couple of minutes of me saying it. I know they're tuned into the stream because they respond all the time. So anyway, earthquake activity. What's going on? You see it's like a plus shape across the whole big island. Goes from over to the west, northwest of Captain Cook out on the ocean, and then comes in on land and goes all the way across over down to Pu'u'o'o. And then we have a line of earthquakes going further out to Loihi, the undersea mount out in the ocean, which they've changed the name on, but I can't pronounce. Anyway, over to the east, we're right at Pu'u'o'o, and we're going to watch at Pu'u'o'o for the next several weeks for the potential of something going on at Pu'u'o'o. Volcanically speaking. Now, they're not talking about that. That's just me, guys. The professionals are never going to agree. But I'm telling you, if you have Mauna Loa going, you have Kilauea going, probably want to keep an eye on the other one that just went in the last 10 years, which was Pu'u'o'o. Went twice in the last 10 years. So It's no shock if it does. It would be a big lava flow and a fissure that would break out, and people might have to, get out of the way of the flow. But hasn't happened yet. If I see seismic happening there, I keep an eye on it. And there's seismic spreading over to it. It is. It's going right over along the coast, right along likely the last time it broke. Might not break, but you got to keep an eye on it when seismic goes to it. Now, speaking of seismic, I think we're going to go back up again. I think we're going to see another near 5 over here next to Pu'u'o'o as an indication that there's something spreading over to Pu'u'o'o besides the small earthquakes. The reason I'm looking for 5s is, well, look at the rest of the plate. We're going all the way up to Japan with 4.9, and then that gets me into Alaska and the coast of the United States. And I wasn't trying to bogart you guys to the last, but we have to get to the United States pretty much last because we're the last to get the flow. Flow starts over here down below the plate, goes out over to the west, heads out over to Europe, heads up towards Japan, and it goes over to the east, heads over to South America like I already explained. And then it goes up all the way around into Alaska and into the United States from the northwest. Let me show you on the USGS map. It's all going to make sense in like 2 seconds. Here's the USGS plate boundary map. And we go up to Japan, over to Alaska, over to Canada, down to the United States. See it? See the shape of the plate? Now look at the earthquakes. This is the USGS map now, 24 hours. See the spacing on these quakes? Wouldn't you say they're somewhat equidistantly spaced apart across this uneven mass? Like a wave spreading across a lake that goes into an inlet and comes back out across the other side. You ever watch that on a lake? When a wave spreads across from, let's just say somebody generated a wave from a dock. Some giant creates a wave and it goes right across and it starts spreading linear across the body of water, but it's also hugging the coastline. You ever see that? So you get an equal spacing of waves that goes across the coastline laterally. You ever see that? Anyway, so the earthquakes are doing the same thing, but they're thousands of miles apart. So I think of it like this. Wave peak coming up here at Japan. Wave peak coming up here along the fracture zone going up north to Kamchatka. Wave peak coming up over here along the coast of the Aleutian Island chain. And then a wave peak hitting at the bend of the plate before it goes down and forced down in the United States, where the combined total of the whole wave is focused in down here on the jagged edge of the Pacific plate. Really, if you look at it, the Juan de Fuca fracture zone, these jagged edges belong to the Pacific. It goes back up, connects to the 5 that's up here. Let's go back to Earthquake 3D now, and you'll see we have 2 5s. First, this one struck. This one struck on 1/10/2023, yesterday, at 1942. And then we move forward just 6 hours to 1/11, and there it is at 10:17. Oh, wait, let me get that right. Hold on, I got the wrong time. 1942 UTC on the 10th, and then 10:17 UTC on the 11th. So we're 15 hours apart. Half a day. First a 5 there, then a 5 there. It's a wave coming across and going down into the Juan de Fuca. And the wave peaks are coming up. I think the wave peaks. It could be the trough, the bottom of the wave, where the quakes happen, but I think it's at the peak where the most tension, as a wave, a very low frequency, electrically induced, somewhat physical wave is traveling through these plate boundaries, like a shock wave almost. But it's electrically induced. It's a piezoelectric energy, whatever. Let me get a sip of my coffee while I try to figure out how to pronounce things. Electric in the ground. VLF, ULF, ELF, very low frequency, ultra low frequency. The earthquakes are spaced out, going out into the United States, where we have a new 5. Okay, so a new 5 off the coast. What does that mean? Well, an incoming wave is coming into the United States, and that gets me into the lower 48. And you can see the incoming wave. Which trajectory is it taking? Well, it's going down along the coast in a diagonal line from northwest all the way to the southeast, right down to Salton Sea Volcano. Then it's going over to the east. It's following the edge of the North American Craton. Now, I don't know if I have the Craton graphic on here. Hold on. Oh, man. There it is. I'm just going to have it on here for a second. I need to set this up so I can show you proper, but see the Craton diagram coming in from the northwest, going down to Texas? Just remember that rusty brownish color there, okay? Again, that rusty brownish. Now we're going to get back over and take a look. It goes right down through California over to Texas. Now, if we take the smaller earthquakes, that Craton diagram that I just showed you goes right up through Idaho and Montana, cuts through Yellowstone itself. Check out our earthquakes. Let me turn off all the numbers here. It's reaching out over to the edge of the craton, and then it's completing across the edge of the craton up to the northeast, all the way up to Maine. Maine has now been hit. Check Maine off the list. It's just a small earthquake, don't worry. But if you're watching the earthquakes creep across the plate, you saw a 1.6 strike over at the New Madrid seismic zone to 1.8. Then you see a 1.8 or 1.9 strike over here at South Carolina. And then a 1.6 to 1.7 strikes up at Maine. 3 of the same size quakes going across the plate in the course of a day, following that craton perfectly. That's one of my biggest discoveries about the flow of earthquakes going around something as opposed to through it. It means it's some kind of physical transfer. Path of least resistance. But it's electrical in nature. All right, now let's go look at the earthquakes. Let's go look them up. Let's take some time on this. Let's go look up the quakes. Now, before I go look up the quakes, let me give somebody a big shout out. MonkeyWorks over here on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube. Or if you're watching on Twitch, this is live on Twitch right now, but I'm going to premiere this back over on YouTube. Check out MonkeyWorks channel. He talked about the FAA shutdown today. And I think it is significant to talk about. Now, again, I'm not going to be covering it much, but the FAA shutdown in conjunction with the X-class flares that are taking place. Now, seismically speaking, we're not seeing much earthquake activity next to military bases very much. There are a few, but not many. The only spot that I would normally even talk about is down here next to Area 51 at the nuke test site, but those are all small earthquakes, of course. So right now, and I've already looked a lot of these up, we don't have military base earthquakes going on. And at the same time that's all going on, he reported that there's 52 different air tankers up as of a few hours ago across the United States for some kind of fighter aircraft that's flying around. So something's going on in the United States. Now, the reason I bring that up, of course, the FAA shutdown, the X-class flares, the seismic activity. One of the spots that he showed off the coast of the United States has our earthquake activity out at it. So that was one of those NOTAM fly zones. Notice to air mission, notice to airmen. The NOTAM system got taken down today. Most people think it's been hacked. It got hacked by an enemy of the United States or so forth, and it got shut down. But anyway, NOTAM is showing a no-fly zone over this area out there. You got an earthquake out there. Okay, that's why I bring it up. Go check out MonkeyWorks. He'll bring you up to speed on all the flights. It's crazy what's going on. Now, speaking of crazy going on, let's go look at the earthquakes in conjunction with what's going on in California. So, in California, I'm sure you've heard about the weather. All of a sudden, storms start forming out over China, come across the Pacific trajectory that's dumping a bunch of rain on the west coast of the United States. They call it, what is it, La Nina, El Nino? Which one is it? Normie explanation is normie explanation. Now, we all know about steering atmospheric wind currents, controlling the jet stream, using plasmas up in the ionosphere, multi-kilometer wide bubbles of superheated basic gases in the atmosphere, electrically induced from radio waves, remotely done from far away, all said to be impossible, weather modification and so forth. That's a load of hogwash. It is possible. Anybody who said it's not possible I don't even listen to them. You shouldn't either. It's totally possible, and it's already been done many times. There's even private companies that do it. For instance, Acquiesce, hired by the state of Texas back in 2011 to steer atmospheric wind currents to bring storms into northwest Texas. And it worked so well, they got 5 feet of hail in one storm alone. Oh, it's just chance. I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm like Michio Kaku in that interview about the lasers in Vietnam. Michio Kaku on TV, they ask him about weather modification and using lasers. And he's like, oh, yeah, they use it in Vietnam, the Viet Cong. And she's like, allegedly, right? And he's like, allegedly, yes. Okay. And that's true. They used lasers in Vietnam over the Viet Cong to make it rain, and it worked tremendously. Better than cloud seeding. It works the same way as cloud seeding. Instead of having to spray something, though, the high-powered laser, the HPL, just strips electrons from the atmosphere, and the free-floating electrons, ionization, just attracts water molecules like dust. Instant rain. Why don't they use it? They are using it. And that's the other thing that people who have denied in the past said to me. This was said several hundred times to me.
If they can control the weather, why don't they use it to stop the drought in California?
Well, first of all, they were creating the drought in California, using the same technology that you could use to create flooding. Now, it looks like our enemies are doing it to us, and that we're not doing it to ourselves. That's what it looks like to me. Anyway, whether you think it's natural or man-made, or both, natural and then man-induced or somehow accentuated, major flooding is coming into California all across the state in many focused areas that I would consider to be hotspot earthquake zones. And as all my longtime viewers know, when there's a big deluge of rain along an active fault zone or a volcanic area, we can start to see a major increase in earthquake activity that's first subtle. First you start to see it next to aquifers and so forth. They would call those water weight earthquakes. Next thing you know, you get a big break. Last example of this was on the creeping section of the San Andreas. Huge storm came in, dumped a bunch of rain on here. We talked about it on the stream. Next day, 4.5 struck right on the creeping section of the San Andreas, which hardly ever gets hit. It normally actually just gets a bunch of smaller earthquakes, normally on the creeping section. It might break up in San Francisco or break down south in Southern California, but normally on the creeping section, it creeps. 1s, 2s, 3s, like what we see here now. Creeping section is right here at the center of the screen. And now it's picking up. The creeping is picking up. We're seeing 2s and 3s instead of 0s and 1s. All right, now, line of earthquakes goes back up to the north. We get right in here. We have a big stack. Let's go look them up. Starting up here at the big stack of earthquakes, the place is called Geysers. The Geysers of California. Guess what's there? Geysers, of course. Geothermal field. And it's a geothermal field on the side of a volcanic field, Mount Canocti and Clear Lake Volcanic Field. Let me turn on my place mark so we can get the volcano information. So first of all, here's the earthquake epicenter. There was a previous false 9.9 earthquake reported there before. It was a decimal point off. It was a 0.9. Somebody at the USGS goofed up. It was crazy. It went on all the feeds. It was crazy. Okay. See these? These are geothermal turbines. They're turned by steam. Steam that's extracted from the ground. Now they pump water down into the ground, actually, there. It's on the side of Clear Lake Volcanic Field here, Mount Canocti at the center. There it is. Now, it's no shock that there's earthquake activity there at the drill points where humans have drilled in and are injecting water to get steam. But you can look and we can follow the fault zones visually down through the Bay Area. And you should be able to see the San Andreas. It's a diagonal line. It goes all the way down to the south. Now, I just showed it to you. There's a line of earthquakes going right through it. And the cluster of earthquakes just so happens to be right below that area where a whole bunch of rain just came in. I'm going to say they're related. And I'm going to think we're going to go up. We're going to go up in magnitudes, a whole magnitude. We're going to start to see 4s just due to the earthquakes that we would see from water weight and the spread through the fault zones and through the volcanic locations. This means Northern California, Central California, Southern California. 3 sets of 4s incoming in the next few days. We have one more day to go at my warning here at the California-Nevada border for a 5.4. One day, tomorrow at like noon, so 12 hours or so. We don't have that long. The warning expires, and it looks like it'll be a flop for me too. In this case, we're down to the last day. Never discount it out to the last day. 5.3 to 5.4 at the California-Nevada border. Okay? Still looking for it. Not canceling the warning yet. We're down to the last day tomorrow. Now you can see there's a line of earthquakes that goes all the way around the area where I have the warning going. You can see there's a line of earthquakes that goes down to the south. There's also a cluster of earthquakes up to the north, centered between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. Now, I just showed you the volcano across the way with a big stack of quakes, right? Well, what would you do if I told you across the way, across the valley, Sacramento Valley, on the other side, between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake, is an undiscovered caldera that I had to find myself due to the earthquakes and fires breaking out around this thing. Let me show it to you, and you can see what I'm talking about. Here is Lake Tahoe. Here is Pyramid Lake. Here is the feature. A giant oval shape that itself is lined with smaller volcanoes. Now, this drew my eye when a series of earthquakes broke out around the outside edge of it, and then went right into the middle of it with a swarm. Then fires, the next year, broke out around this thing. I saw it and I said, oh, wow, that looks oval-like. Then I turned on my volcano place marks and saw that down to the south we had Steamboat Springs, and on the north side, they're not marked with the volcano place marks. Here are the needles at Pyramid Lake with the tufa deposits. Tufa, like calcium carbonate type deposit that's upwelled by geothermal field there. So we have a geothermal field on the south side and a geothermal field on the north side of this thing, somewhat equidistantly spaced. So it's lined with volcanoes, gets hit with earthquakes around the outside edge and going in the middle, has 2 geothermal fields on either side. To seal the deal, 2 basins on either side. Basins, again, are folds that happen in a plate normally around a huge volcanic feature. I could show you another example. Let's go down to the south. This is the known supervolcano Long Valley caldera. It too is lined with its own volcanoes. It too gets hit with earthquakes around the outside edge. And on both sides of it, we have 2 basins. One, Mono Lake, there. And on the other side, it's a river valley. Goes down into Death Valley. You see it. 2 basins. And we have geothermal fields on both sides. That's what Mono Lake is. And geothermal field down to the south goes right into Crater Mountain. So it's the same thing, but it's smaller. This is the known supervolcano. Back to the older one, the bigger one, up to the north. Let's go look at the quakes now. Now that I've explained all that for the 1000th time, I do this in every update so that new people can understand that I discovered something that's pretty big there on the California-Nevada border that somehow everybody missed. And look at the quakes. They kind of point to it. Anyway, showing everybody that, the fires that break out around these things. It's so wild. Down to the south, we could say the same thing at the California-Nevada border. Look at the earthquakes. Let's wait for it to refresh. See how they're centered right there at the California-Nevada border, reaching over to our arrow and reaching back over into the valley. Let's go look up the earthquake in the valley. Mariposa, California. There's something here in the valley. First of all, fires broke out here in the valley many times, multiple times in a row, and they blamed it on people. But when I was looking up the earthquakes, I noticed something here, right here. The fires were breaking out all the way around this, and I noticed the earthquakes are breaking all the way around this. Hopefully you can see it. It's a giant circular feature. It's a bulge or a dome. Now, earthquakes around it, fires around it. What is it? It's a bulging laccolith, most likely. How do I come to that determination? Here's the supervolcano on the other side of the mountain range. Supervolcano there, and a bulging laccolith about the same size as the supervolcano. One gets hit with earthquakes and fires around it. Oh, the other gets hit with earthquakes and fires around it. That's the other thing. A bunch of fires breaking out on the backside of Mammoth Mountain over here, next to the old buttes. Over and over again, like year after year after year. They try to blame it on this and that person. They always have an excuse. Anyway, earthquake there now. Okay, so earthquake going from this 2.5 that I just showed you next to the laccolith. We go across the mountain range to the supervolcano, and we carry on out over into Nevada. What's all the way out over here in Nevada? Nevada. People thank me for saying it right. I'm like, hey man, I didn't know. Guess I'll fit in out there. You guys you need a new. I was trying to figure out where I would fit in the United States. Like, I'm not welcome anywhere. Seriously. Where could I move where people would actually not run me out like I'm some kind of heretic or something? Anybody? Go ahead and fill up the chat room with suggested areas where you think Dutch Synths would be welcome. And I'm not talking about the weed. They'd welcome that more than me, you know what I mean? Okay, here we go. Now I got your attention now, huh? Teacher got your attention. Hey, I smell that in the back. I'm going to confiscate. I'm going to take it as evidence. That's right, evidence. Yeah, that's a ticket evidence. I'm going to tell your parents, too. Okay, where's the earthquake? Let's back it out. Let's go one more time. We just went from the laccolith across the border at the supervolcano all the way over to this 3.0, and we're going to backtrack across over to the border so you can see all the other features. But let's hit search one more time. We're going all the way to the east to that 3. Here's the 3. Where is it? Black Buttes and Thunder Mountain. Goblin Knobs and Lunar Craters are the greater feature over to the east. Which should we look at first? Let's look at Goblin Knobs. The Goblin Knobs So many jokes can be cracked right now. I know. Look, I'm setting myself up, right? Did you hear Dutch talking about goblin knobs? Yeah. I got your attention again, don't I? Lunar craters. There, look at them. This is like a really cool volcanic feature out there in the middle of the desert. It's blown many times in the past. As you can see, we have younger lava flows coming out of older buttes. We have a past crater that's not from a meteorite, but just a shallow blast area where a pocket of magma came up and blew out. This one's an older butte with a younger lava flow coming out of it. So this one formed a long time ago, then it broke open some point in the past, even more recent. And this is the younger feature, lunar craters. And again, Goblin Knobs is down at the south. Over to the west, Black Buttes, not much better. Not much better than Goblin Knobs. Oh, this update has just went downhill like tenfold. What's in this coffee? Thunder Mountain Volcanic Butte. It's the only one that I could like legitimately talk about without cracking a smile. So back over to the valley one more time. Volcano. I said I was going to backtrack, so let's do that. Let's backtrack over to the corner of Nevada. Almost said coast of Nevada. The corner of Nevada, the western side. Where are we going? On the side of Monte Cristo Hills Volcanic Center. This broke apart with 6.0 level activity a few years ago, and it continues to get hit as new breaks come across. A 6-mile-long surface fissure fracture, crack in the ground, formed here. And it spread across this way over to the west, over towards these, which are like these old pit mines. I don't know how old they are. They're old, okay? These are hashtag Tartaria. I don't see how the miners could have done this. But there they are, ancient and degraded, old open pit mines. And we spread right over to there and had another 6.0 quake. Now, I don't know what this is. Maybe a tailing pile? It is, look. Supposedly, again, hashtag Tartaria, a giant pyramidal tailing pile. It really is. That's huge. That's so big, but that has to be what they took out of the ground from those old pit mines that are there, that are just left open and left to decay. That's where the quakes are. Now we go back over to the west and we go right over to the border. And what's over to the west? I can just quickly show you. Here was where our quake was that I just showed you at Monte Cristo. We go over to the west, we get over to here. What's over here? Well, hold on. Here's the border. Do I have my borders turned on? I don't. Okay, there we go. Here's the border. We go over to the west. The earthquakes go right over to here. Aurora Bodhi Crater, which is something I used to show a lot. Used to get a lot of earthquake activity through here. Take a look. Mud Springs Volcanic Buttes. What's this? Hold on. I never noticed this. What we got going on here? Landslide? Is that a landslide? That's what it looks like. Yep. Kind of landslide location. Wow. All right, had landslides there, surface deformation. Now check it out. Look what happens here. This is 200 or 300 feet off the desert floor. This is a lava flow that was 200 to 300 feet high, and it spread out this way and buckled out and stopped right about there. A very thick and viscous lava flow traced back to the center butte, or the spatter cone and sill, back to the east. It's on the side of Aurora Bodhi Crater. All this has erupted in the past. I'm not saying it's going to erupt now, but that's where our seismic has flowed. So recapping, guys, do I have your attention? May I have order? Order! I said order! I was watching the Brits do this debate a few years ago. This guy was great. Sound like him? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I got a future in Parliament. Yeah. Wake up, everybody. We got a line of earthquakes coming in from out off the coast. It goes down in a diagonal line through the creeping section. We're going to watch for an increase up to 4.5. Same time we're going to watch for 4.5 there. We're going to watch in Northern California all the way up. I didn't even mention this. All the way up by Mount Shasta, where that big lake is filling. And then we go down across to the California-Nevada border, where I still have my 5.4 warning going for another day. Now finally down to Southern California. Our lines of earthquakes point to it. See our earthquakes going down across the coast? That's the San Andreas Fault, that diagonal line. Now you'll notice the earthquakes across the valley. Look at that. Albeit, look at that. They're doing the same thing. They're going the same trajectory. They're going the same direction, and they are the same size, within a hair of a point of one another. Now what is that? Well, here's the San Andreas. You see it. It goes down along the coast. Everybody knows about it. You can even see it on Google Earth. It is literally in the topography, the San Andreas. But what's down here? Take a look. A line of quakes going right through here. Let's go pull the coordinates. Let's get the... Oh, look, a new one just struck as I'm talking about the location. Little Lake, California. There must be a bunch of little lakes there. Maybe there are. It's out in the middle of the desert, what we would consider to be Death Valley. Let's go take a look. Maybe the little lakes are something else. Yeah, those... Hey, look, those are little lakes. They're absolutely beautiful. What are all those pipes? Turns out this is a spot where they're doing injection again. They're injecting water to get steam, to turn the turbines. This comes from the tip of the Coso volcanic field, where humans have drilled in to multiple buttes. Literally. Take a look. Here's an old spatter cone. They went on the top of the spatter cone, drilled into it, and on both sides. That's what that is, a spatter cone. Here's a rising obsidian butte dome thing. That's a laccolith. That's another point where magma is coming in and bulging. Now, at some point, these should, well, with humans interfering, I don't know what's going to go on. But at some point, those should turn into something like this. Like Volcano Peak. This is pre-rupture. This is post-rupture. You see it? Here's one at the foot. This one is older. It's been covered with sand, blowing in sand. This one still is yet to blow. This one blew recently, within the past few hundred or thousand years, and it caused that more recent lava flow. Now, look how many there are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row there. Think of like La Palma, for instance, with 4 in a row. Lines of volcanoes. That's where our quakes are. A whole line of them, going in the same trajectory as the San Andreas. Now, what's up? Well, we go down the San Andreas. We jump over across the valley. There's a 3.1 across the valley at a place called Porterville. Porterville. Anybody remember Porterville? How about all the fires? The fires again. We're back to the fires. I have to equate in the fires because the fires are breaking out along a lot of fault zones on times where there's no storms. So what's here? Well, what's all that? Looks like we have some quarrying going on right there next to it. What else do we have here? Do we have any kind of power generation? I wonder if they're generating power. I would think they probably aren't. There's not enough water in California to do any kind of power generation, right? Unless it's some kind of... Yeah, this looks like some kind of recreational area, camping. Okay. Water weight earthquake. Over on the edge of the valley, is there anything else worth looking at? What's this? Water collection again. That might be for the crops. Oh, hold on. High voltage power. Uh-oh. Okay. Hold on. We've got the high voltage power lines right there. Coming through the area, you can see the substation. I have to go see again if we have a big wind farm or something else next to this. Power generation is definitely can induce earthquake activity. We've seen this many times in the past. I don't see anything around it, power generation wise, but that's just a cursory look. So I'll look at lake success and think about it filling up with a bunch of water and us talking about the water weight earthquakes. Now, to seal the deal that there's at least something coming across, we know for certain up to the north. That's where our other earthquake is, the 2.5. So we're coming across. So if you were to connect this 1.8 here through this 3.1 in a line, look where it takes you. If you were to just carry that line straight on out, it takes you to the tip of this diagonal line of earthquakes on the east side of California. And look where it goes down to. It dead ends into the Garlock Fault. Let me go over and turn on the fault feature here from the USGS. Here is the Garlock Fault. Wait, I just zoomed in too far. Here is the Garlock Fault. And the earthquakes are coming down and dead-ending into it. Same time they're coming down the San Andreas, jumping over the valley, then going down into it like a lightning bolt shape. Jumping across the valley, going down to the Garlock. Well, it doesn't stop there. The wave that I'm talking about carries on and goes down through California, down south. And look at the line of quakes down in Southern California. Notice anything about the quakes in Southern California? What are they doing? They're doing the same thing the quakes are doing here, over in Eastern California, and here, over in Western California, right along the coast on the San Andreas. They're focused in both. If you were to connect these in, be like a giant letter V or a giant Y shape that goes across the Mojave Desert. Now we have a lone earthquake out here in the Mojave Desert. Let's go see where the lone quake happened. Ludlow. Uh-oh. Ludlow. Why am I saying uh-oh to Ludlow? Well, first of all, it sounds good together. Secondly, this is where I got my first trouble with the USGS back in 2011. Back in 2011, my viewers started contacting me first below videos. I had only a few thousand subscribers at the point, leaving me comments saying, hey, will you check the radar out in California? It looks like something weird's going on out in the desert. This is in July of 2011, middle of the summer. And I go look at the radar, and there's something coming out of the desert recorded as moisture. Some kind of moisture return coming from right here. Now I zoom in, on weather satellite, I go look at satellite, human visible, like not radar, I look at the satellite, and it shows a clear day and there's nothing there. Not even a cloud. It's a middle of the summer desert day. It's like blazing hot, but yet you go on the radar and it's showing some kind of moisture. So you couldn't see it with your eye. Whatever it was happening over a few miles and it was some kind of moisture. So I made a video and showed the location and zoomed in on it. I said, what are those black spots there? I didn't have the place marks or anything at the time, so I had to go do some research. I made the video, showed the plume coming out of the desert on the clear day, showed the satellite, showed that there was no clouds there or anything. And then I found out it was called Pisgah Crater. So I titled the video Pisgah Crater, some kind of steam plume, whatever, and the USGS picked up my video and responded to it with an official press release from the California Volcano Observatory, denying the video, saying I was mistaken and that it must be a thunderstorm. Now, we were already looking at it, and there was no clouds. There was clear day. No clouds formed. It was invisible to the human eye. It was over many miles, this moisture return. Low end, not like rain, just some kind of moisture. And they said it must be a thunderstorm. And this is in day one of this, because guess what? The USGS had to take down their press release about me, saying I was incorrect, because it went on for 2 more days from the same spot out in the desert, originating from the ground. And so then a couple weeks later, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, a 5.0 earthquake, pretty rare, struck right next to this volcano, Pisgah Crater. All right, why does that matter? This spot right here, I did some deep research on and found out this is the spot where the biggest earthquake in California's recorded history took place back in 1999 at 7.5 or 7.9. A mega quake, you know? And it happened in 99. They call it the Hector Mine earthquake. Now, you think the USGS would have noticed that, right? When they issued their press release and there's a steam plume coming from there, showed up on radar of some kind, but you can't see it with the human eye. It's over many miles wide, so it's not like a geyser coming out of the ground, shooting out of the ground where you can see billowing steam. It must have been some kind of massive heat up down below that caused a whole area to steam. It must just look like a hazy day at the ground level, but on radar it's showing a rising plume of moisture coming out of it. It's crazy. Anyway, they denied it. And then the earthquake struck next to it a few weeks later. So why did it get hit in 2011? Well, for the same reason it's getting hit now. In 2011, it was a bigger push coming across. You may remember back in 2011, those 5s that came down across and went right across the Mojave and focused in where? Like an arrow pointing down to Southern California, which I just showed you. Now let's go into LA. Let's go into Los Angeles. Guys, well, you know what? With all the rain, I saw that, a lot of your concrete areas that were designed for drainage are maxed out. And that's the way it goes. But this is that monsoonal type flow, but it's artificially created, in my opinion, which I'm going to show you by the end of this what's going on, I think, with the weather. But we'll get into that at the very end of this. So, check it out. Our earthquake in LA, where is it? There it is, Inglewood. And just north of here, by a few blocks, we have this. A large oil and gas pumping operation. Look how many Jackson wells are here. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, or 11 just on that hilltop alone. It's not a Jack storage yard either, guys. This is an active pumping operation. It goes across the Baldwin Hills, and that's the current active pumping. It actually used to extend out right down to where these current earthquakes are. So old drill points. That's where we are in LA. We go down along the coast, and there's actually something right there along the coast. I can actually just zoom in on the coast and show you. Right down here. So the quakes are coming in right along the coast. You remember that pipeline break that happened out here? The pipeline break happened between these offshore rigs for oil and gas and the land, which I think you can even see on Google. Yeah, you can see one of these broke. I don't know which one broke. So we're following the quakes down to the south. Now this diagonal line of quakes, these aren't drill points along here. This is all fault zone activity basically going east of LA all the way down to the border. No drill points, as far as I can tell, as far as I found. But we're swarming. We're swarming and we're picking up in the magnitudes. So think of this like a drummer beating the drum. And not only are they picking up the beats per minute, but they're picking up the amount that they're hitting. The intensity at which they're beating the drum. So we're not just at zeros. We're at zeros, ones, twos, and threes. Pretty much across all of California right now. Let's recap. A whole diagonal line of 3.0 level activity going down from the north all the way down to the south. Let me show it to you. There it is. Here's 2.9 and greater. There's 2.9 and greater. So it's a diagonal line reaching from that 5, pointing down to Southern California. We've got a warning going at the California-Nevada border, right at the center of all of this, for a 5.4. Expires tomorrow. Over to the east, you can see the flow going over to Texas, but it's all centered in California right now. With a new 5 off the coast, I'm just going to tell you, we're going to go up a notch across the board. Everywhere where there are 3s, we're going to see a bunch of 4s. Everywhere where there were 4s, we're going to see new 5s. So where were there 4s? Well, USGS says there weren't any, but we know there were a few upper 3s that struck over the past several days. And where did they strike? Where I got the 5 issued the warning for the 5 now. You have 5s incoming, you have a 5 warning going, and it's going at the California-Nevada border. 4.5 is enough to get everybody's attention, and that should be happening along the creeping section of the San Andreas, just south of the Bay Area, next to Monterey Bay. We should also see over in up in Northern California, Shasta, like I said. This is not a full, thorough forecast either, guys. This is just me giving you the update and kind of winging it along the way on the spots that we're talking about. Now, let's take you in. I'm going to take you, I don't care if you see my bookmarks or not, taking you over and showing you this. Look at this. The Goes West Full Disc Dirty Long Wave View. We're looking at the dirty view. Dirty. Now, serious, check it out. Take a look. Wait for this to load. I'm going to speed it up so we don't have to wait for it to just, slowly go through. You can see our storms coming in along the west coast of the United States and the low pressure systems that are out here twirling away over the North Pacific and pulling that warm air up along. This is Hawaii right there. We have the tropics, of course. We have the equator right through here. Here's Ecuador right along the equator. We have our storms that are kind of vaporizing off right now. And the North Pole and the South Pole. And there's going to be some debate on that. I know people don't agree on the North Pole, South Pole. Some people think it's flat Earth, whatever. Whatever way you want to look at it, our storms are twisting in from off the west coast and pushing and pulling that moisture in. Again, the atmospheric river flow. And they're connecting one to the other back across all the way over to China, which you can't even see on Goes West. There's another satellite system that'll show us over Asia. Now, what's going on? Well, you can see each low pressure system. Now, we know about controlling low pressure systems, at least from past experiences, from what we know about weather modification and steering atmospheric currents. Now, we know China has their own system now, so we don't have to point to HARP. We could also point to China's Meridian program, if you don't know about it, or Europe's EISCAT, EISCAT 3D program, or just regular EISCAT. So we have HARP, we have the Meridian program, we have EISCAT. God knows what the Russians have. God knows what militaries have mobile these days and up in space. All I can tell you is that atmospheric rivers can be steered according to Aqueous company that was hired by the state of Texas to do it back in 2011 from the ground. So if they could do it from the ground, it's a private company, and that's 2011. Imagine what we have now, or they have now, whoever they are. Now, I would like to draw your attention to something else going on, which should draw your eye all the way down south, down the southern hemisphere, down here. See that? See the blockage that's going on there? See the movement that's going on there? See the shape the clouds are taking? Watch this again. Watch that again. Look at that. Now, this is rotating clockwise. High pressure, right? But down here, we're rotating counterclockwise. Low pressure. There's something blocking the atmospheric river all the way from South America over to the west. Meanwhile, capping it off over in the very far west Pacific. This could be natural. I'm not saying that humans are doing this, but in order to balance and offset, they could be steering it down to Antarctica for all I know. There could be some giant weather modification thing taking place. Could just be a natural thing, but the blockage is obvious. You can see it down to the south. Now, meanwhile, compensating on the north side, the planet compensates. So you block a moisture flow on one side of the planet within a short period of time. I'd say within weeks, you start to see an effect elsewhere. This has been blocked for several days like this, down in the southern hemisphere. On the northern hemisphere, we're rolling right across, coming out of China. But look where we're rolling to. We come out of China, and the low pressure system goes up to the north. You can barely see it. It goes up over Kamchatka, Russia, where they have their radio frequency testing range that they built, that they announced. We're coming off of Japan, and we're rolling up towards Kamchatka, that low pressure system. The next one that's slated to come in from up here. You can see it just rolling in on the edge of the globe, or whatever you want to call it, on the edge of the screen, coming out of Japan and heading up to the Aleutian Island chain, with the center of it just west-southwest of the Aleutians. Well, let's bring this back due north and just take a look. We're looking across this way, and we're west-southwest of the Aleutians. That puts us right here, off the coast of Kamchatka, where the center of the low just went. So maybe I shouldn't point my finger at China. Maybe I should point my finger at the Russians for steering and controlling the atmospheric river to the point where it gets outrageous over on the west coast of the United States. It's possible. It's possible. I'm not trying to get all conspiracy on you, but it's possible. We can't ignore it. And we can't ignore the earthquakes. We can't ignore the deep quakes. We can't ignore the X-class flares and the potential for large earthquake activity after they arrive. But if they're cutting the arrival and we don't get to see the arrival of the X-class flare, that's just troubling. That's just troubling. So all my warnings stand from 2 to 3 days ago that I've issued on my channel. The forecast stands. The only thing that we need to add in is that there's been a new X-class flare, and we still watch between our current sets of quakes. The new deep quakes are just a sign that things are getting ready to take the next step up. California-Nevada border is going to get hit. And finally, let me add a new warning to this. This is actually one that I do have to add in. Well, let's not call it a warning yet. I'm going to do a separate video on this, but let me just throw it in there now. North Mexico, right at the California border, San Diego going down into Mexico, likely will be getting a new 5 as well. Just to complete it across. We have 5s going all the way around the plate. I mean, if they don't, it would be really weird. It would be really weird to just see the completion of the quakes just go around to the United States. You know, again, to come out of the West Pacific, go up into the United States, and not fill back across North Mexico, it would just be odd. Look which way we have the arrows pointing. They're there for a reason. We watch the flow to come in from the northwest, go across the Craton, and back over to the east by southeast. Okay, let me end this video by telling everybody to have an earthquake plan. You know, at a time where we start to see earthquakes slightly increase, like we are now, the size, the number of earthquakes isn't really crazy right now. The size is starting to creep back up into the 7 level, which gets everybody's attention. But this is not our biggest earthquake activity that we've seen in the last 10 years by far. We've seen way bigger, knock on wood, we've seen way bigger back in 2011, in 2012, size-wise and the number of earthquakes-wise. In 2016 going into 2017, we had 5,000 earthquakes in a week, and several of them were 6s and 7s and going up to near 8. So that just dwarfs where we are now with 1,800 quakes for the week. 1,800 quakes as opposed to 5,000 just a few years ago. And magnitudes are not even near what we were at just a few years ago. But just a few years ago is when we were really going through it with the deep earthquakes. The number of deep earthquakes was going crazy. And the solar was going on. We were seeing a bunch of X-class flares. M as in Michael, and X. Both going back to back to back. And the big earthquake activity and the deep earthquake activity was going phenomenal back in 2016 and 2017. Then the solar minimum happened, right? Went down. We were going out of solar maximum, coming down to the very bottom, going into solar minimum. And people were talking about it. They're like, oh, solar minimum, it's going to be the end, you know? And, it got pretty intense. It did, right? When we were starting to go into the solar minimum, it did. And then we went into minimum, and things got minimum. Seismically speaking, so much as well. We have had a few large quakes, but nothing like what we saw back at the solar maximum back in 2011. We were ending the solar maximum in 2011 when Japan happened. And then 2012, we started to go down, and we go down for 10 years, slowly progressing down into solar minimum. Solar minimum goes for however long, a couple of years, whatever, and then it goes back up, and we start going back up. Here we are now, starting to go back up. So we're coming out of solar minimum, going back up to solar maximum over the next 10 to 11 years. And we'll hit solar maximum 10 or 11 years from now. Anyway, all right, guys. So develop an earthquake plan. You need to know what to do when a quake hits your area, especially if it hits at night. People reminded me of this, and I never told you in a video, but we've talked about this in other discussion forums. If you're asleep, the chances of you waking up when the quake is first hitting is pretty slim. You'll wake up as the quake is striking or when it's over. And you'll have broken things all around. Now, also, if you're sleeping, do you have things by your bed that could fall on you? Shelves with things on it and so forth that could fall and hit you? Might want to think about, big armoires that can tip over. With your armoires that can tip over, your dressers, you can actually get zip ties, strong zip ties from the hardware store, and screw those into the back of your furniture. And then screw that in to a stud on your wall, and it will stop it from falling out and falling on you. You don't want those things falling on you while you're asleep. And if you're asleep, you're going to be getting out of bed, you should have a pair of hard bottom slippers or shoes by the side of your bed that just stay there, and you only use them in case of emergency. Or you can use them every day. Get used to using them. Maybe that would be a good idea, actually. Start using them every day. Hard bottom slippers or shoes next to your bed when you get out. And in that way, if it's the middle of the night, the power's out, you still know where they are, roughly speaking, and you can put them on before you have to go fumble through glass and broken things on the floor. Final suggestion, emergency kit. Do it. I say this every update almost. You need to do an emergency kit. And it'll get you through more than just earthquakes. It'll be just a general emergency kit that has a change of clothes, set of shoes, batteries, flashlight, because you don't want to get stuck using your phone. First aid, of course, sanitation, something to eat, high energy, high protein, easy to carry, prepackaged, lightweight. I'm just giving you ideas. I give them every time. You guys will come up with way better ideas than what I'm throwing out now, by the way. I hope. But go to the dollar store if you can't afford it to go to a nice mountain backpacking supply store. Dollar store it, baby. The point is to have some stuff to get you through for a couple days when everybody else is fumbling around, doesn't have anything. And the water, you start getting thirsty, man. You know how it is. Serious. The water needs to be met, or some kind of drink. You guys be safe. And remember what I always say, don't be scared. Be prepared. And for real, I mean it. You need to just be prepared and you'll be way better off than everybody else who starts to panic when things go down. Okie dokie. Word up and much love. What's going on in chat? Let's go see everybody in chat. What's happening? Ah. All right. Okay, good, good. I'll be uploading this to YouTube in just a few minutes. You guys, be safe and peace out.